Okay, so I'm going to explain this to you in a way that even you can understand it, because this should have been a huge story when it was happening, but for some reason the media completely whiffed on it. We're talking about the OPEC 2020 deal. Black Swanson here says OPEC supply cut was to save the oil industry, U.S. included. COVID destroyed oil demand, and there had to be an effort to cut supply by a similar amount. I don't recall Trump being that involved in it. Seriously? OPEC's pretty good about managing decisions on their own. So according to Fox News and Donald Trump both, they were very involved in it, played a key role. But now I'm going to show you how the OPEC 2020 deal and the oil price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia was not actually an oil price war. It was just a trap that they set for Donald Trump to exact revenge on him for what he did to them in 2018. So the first thing we need to establish is that Russia and Saudi Arabia are strong allies. Russia's a part of OPEC now. They do everything together. So starting in early 2018, Donald Trump started pushing Saudi Arabia to increase oil production by 2 million barrels of oil a day. It was an election year, and he was trying to get gas prices down as they were creeping up close to $3 a gallon. He even threatened Saudi Arabia in front of the UN, threatened to pull away all of our military that's protecting their oil fields if they didn't increase production. At one point in June of 2018, Saudi Arabia even said they would, but they never did. But then, what happened on October the 2nd of 2018? Jamal Khashoggi happened. And when that happened, Donald Trump had all the leverage he needed to use against Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump had promised Saudi Arabia that the reason they needed to increase oil production was because he was implementing sanctions on Iran and Venezuela. Once the Jamal Khashoggi murder happened, Donald Trump had the leverage. Saudi Arabia went ahead and increased oil production. They did it the day after Donald Trump came out and said MBS was not responsible for the death of Jamal Khashoggi. They did it the day after. And what did Donald Trump do? He granted waivers to Iran. Saudi Arabia has increased production. Trump grants waivers to Iran. The whole global oil market crashes. Yeah, it was called the Great Oil Crash of 2018. I don't know if you remember that or not. But it caused bankruptcies in the U.S. oil and gas industry to increase by 50% in 2019. And as the crash was happening and bankruptcies were increasing by 50% in 2019, what was Donald Trump doing? Look at the date of this, 2019. Trump, very important that OPEC increases the flow of oil. So even though Donald Trump has created a global oil market crash, he is still on Saudi Arabia about continuing to increase the production of oil and crash the market even more. Why? Saudi Arabia and Russia lost hundreds of billions of dollars because of Donald Trump. And then when COVID happened, these two very close allies somehow got into an oil price war. I wonder why two very close allies would get into an oil price war. Because Donald Trump had threatened Saudi Arabia so much about how they produced their oil and how much oil they produced, they were setting a trap for Donald Trump to get him to the table to agree to oil production cuts. Because once it had his blessing, there was nothing he could do about it. And they got him to that table, and they bent his ass over. And what was the result of that? Saudi Arabia had the most profitable company in the history of the world, with $3.2 trillion to invest by 2030. That is what happened. Oh, and we got record gas prices. So when Joe Biden went to Saudi Arabia to ask them to increase production, like Donald Trump had done many times, he was basically asking them to restore production back to where it was when Donald Trump was president before the OPEC 2020 deal. Because it was literally the worst deal ever. So to recap, Donald Trump stabbed OPEC and OPEC Plus in the back, and they exacted their revenge on him during COVID. So if it was to save the oil industry needed saved because of something Donald Trump did. But you have to be an idiot to agree to a 10% 2-year production cut from the two second and third largest producers in the world for a pandemic that was only going to last 2 weeks. And somewhere in the middle of all this, with Saudi Aramco being the most profitable country in the history of the world and all of that happening, somehow, nobody knows why, Jared Kushner got $2 billion. The dots are not hard to connect, my friend. Thanks.